It was a quiet Friday morning when my wife, Rachel, casually informed me that she had plans to go out after work. She mentioned she might not be home until the next day. Her delivery was smooth, like she had rehearsed it for days. It was obvious that she had made up her mind, leaving no room for discussion. She assured me that she still loved me, though her distant, distracted gaze said otherwise. That was the first time I faced infidelity in my marriage. Infidelity, I realized, wasn't just some abstract concept from movies, books, or gossip. It was happening right in front of me. Rachel launched into a well-practiced monologue about how she thought I was strong enough to handle this. She lamented not having the chance to explore her options before we got married, claiming monogamy was outdated. She argued society was too rigid about relationships and promised she'd be more attentive to my needs if I just let her have this freedom. Her words were laced with cliches. Her body, her choice. Life is short. She deserves pleasure. She even ventured into ridiculous analogies, likening her desires to tasting a variety of flavors. I stayed silent, processing what felt like betrayal packaged as liberation. For the record, her sudden craving for variety wasn't due to any lack on my part. I'm not one to boast, but I am well accomplished, intelligent, and financially secure. By anyone's standards, I was doing just fine. When Rachel finally finished her speech, I had two choices: react with anger or stay calm. Anger might have satisfied my ego, but would have accomplished little. Instead, I thought of Herman Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener, a story that had always fascinated me. In that moment, Bartleby's quiet, defiant mantra, "I would prefer not to," suddenly clicked as the perfect response. When Rachel leaned in for a goodbye kiss, I simply said, "I'd rather not." Her jaw dropped, caught off guard by my calm refusal. For a moment, I could see her struggling to find the words. The tirade that followed was predictable. She accused me of being immature, resentful, and unsupportive. Finally, she threw down an ultimatum. Either I accept her terms or lose her. My reply stayed the same. "I'd rather not." That simple phrase unsettled her. She faltered, trying to mask her insecurity with a show of determination. She shifted tactics, offering compromises. She said she wouldn't stay out all night on her first date, and promised to come home afterward to reassure me of her love. I met every offer with the same response: "I'd rather not." Her frustration boiled over. She brought up divorce, threatening to take everything: our house, my savings, even my trust fund, while flaunting the idea of entertaining her new lovers in our home. What Rachel had conveniently forgotten was the ironclad prenuptial agreement we signed years ago during her law school days. It had been her idea, drafted meticulously in one of her classes and fully enforceable. When she realized her threats held no weight, she left, slamming the door behind her. Rachel didn't come home that Friday night or the next day. By Sunday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she finally returned, looking exhausted and disheveled. She stumbled into the house, dropping her bag near the patio where I was grilling steaks. Without even glancing her way, I focused on flipping the ribeye and rotating the corn. "I guess you'd rather not kiss me now, huh?" she muttered. I kept my attention on the grill, answering only with silence. "Are you going to cook me one of those steaks?" she asked, her voice tired. "I'd rather not," I replied calmly. She groaned. "Seriously? Are you just going to keep saying that? It's getting old." I turned toward her, ready to respond, but she cut me off. "No, don't say it. Just don't. I'm too tired for this right now. We'll talk later." When she finally sat down, she tried to guilt me into a conversation about our years together. 7 in total, including 5 years of marriage. "Are you really throwing all that away? Over 2 weekends?" she asked, her tone pleading. I looked at her, steady and resolute. "Rachel, it wasn't me who threw it away. I needed it," Rachel confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "It's been eating away at me for years. I thought when I married you, all those questions and doubts would disappear. I love you, and I always will, but every time I was around another man, I'd find myself wondering, what was he like in bed? What would it feel like to be desired, not cherished? I wanted to understand the difference, to know what it's like to be that girl on the cover of a romance novel, swept off her feet by the rough cowboy who takes what he wants. or to be the peasant girl caught in the arms of the lord of the manor. I'm sorry, but I couldn't stop myself. She looked at me, desperate for a response. You're an amazing husband, a great lover even, but maybe I should have tried being with someone else before we got married. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. Please, don't just stand there. Say something. I carefully placed the steak and cob of corn onto a toasted bun, added a grilled peach for good measure, and finally turned to face her for the first time since her return. I'd rather not. Her face crumpled. No, don't do this. Don't be so cold. Yell at me, scream. Hit me if you have to, but don't ignore me. I know I was wrong, and I'll do anything to fix this. Just take me back. I'd rather not. Things escalated from there. No, I didn't grill her a steak, though for a brief moment, I considered charring one to ash just to get through the tension. Over the next few days, she kept trying to talk to me, but every plea was met with the same calm, polite response, I'd rather not. She asked me what I wanted instead. I just shrugged. I didn't leave the room when she spoke, but I didn't engage either. She was visibly desperate to get back in my good graces. The following Friday, Rachel came home a little later than usual, chattering nonstop about how her happy hour with coworkers had been, just laughs and drinks. Then she noticed the table was bare, and I was getting ready to leave. What's going on? Are we going out? Wait, you're not taking me, are you? Is this my punishment? Are you going to her place now? I shook my head and answered, I'd rather not, before walking out the door. That night, I took my parents, who were in town for the weekend, to dinner on a river cruise. I had put them up at a nice hotel to avoid involving them in the mess at home. They already knew what had happened, but we kept the evening light and enjoyable. I returned home at 10:30 p.m., still dressed sharp, and found Rachel crying in the living room. I went straight to bed. The next morning, I woke to the smell of breakfast, eggs, toast, bacon. She sat across from me as I ate, her face pale. Last night was awful, she admitted. You left, and I was here alone. I couldn't stop thinking about you being with someone else. It was horrible, and now I understand what you must have felt when I was gone all weekend. If I ask you something, will you be honest with me? Were you with another woman? Considering I'd spent the evening with my mom, who was very much a woman, I answered honestly. Yes. Her face twisted into a mix of emotions. Anxiety gripped her, but there was also a flicker of relief. I had spoken to her. For once, the silence had broken. It felt like progress. After breakfast, I grabbed my golf clubs and left to meet my dad. We spent the day on the course, hitting balls and talking about everything except my marriage. My father was in his 40s, but played like a pro in his prime. At one point, he mentioned how proud he was of me, and though he didn't directly reference the situation, I knew what he meant. When I got home, freshly showered and dressed in my tuxedo for another evening out, Rachel caught me on the stairs. Her jaw dropped when she saw me. Wow, she must be special to get a night like this, she said, forcing a smile. No one compares to you when you dress up like that. All of our anniversary dinners have been unforgettable. She's a lucky girl, whoever she is. I don't suppose you'll tell me? I'd rather not. Her smile faltered, but she nodded. I understand. I realize I screwed up. I threw you aside and humiliated you. I'll always regret that weekend. Then, as if the dam burst, she poured out the story of her so-called adventure. Her first date had been a disaster. A burger from a fast food joint, awful concert seats, and an even worse man. Her second attempt at reclaiming her femininity ended with her babysitting a drunk coworker. By the time she realized the futility of it all, she was sitting alone in a shabby motel room, eavesdropping on a group of divorced women venting about their failed relationships. They talked about men, she said, her voice shaking. How so many were selfish or dishonest. How the best ones were both caring and enough. I had a good man at home, and I threw it all away. And now, I don't know how to fix this. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I had nothing more to give her. I'd rather not, I said softly before walking away. I almost left then and there to come home to you, but something stopped me. I stayed on that balcony, listening to the rest of their conversation. In hindsight, I am glad I did. Not because I learned anything groundbreaking, but because I finally had the clarity to reflect. After they finished talking, there was only silence. I spent the rest of the night thinking about you, about us, and everything I had thrown away. I woke up on that balcony with the sun already blazing on my face, starting to burn my skin. I felt miserable on so many levels. The guilt of what I had put you through weighed on me like a stone. My body was stiff from sleeping in a cramped position on a lounge chair, and my stomach churned from the greasy food and 2 bottles of cheap wine I had downed the night before. My head throbbed from it all. It was as if my body was mirroring the mess inside me. I called the front desk, arranged for a late checkout, and collapsed back into bed. When I woke up hours later, I took a long shower, got dressed, and finally made my way home. That evening, Rachel stood in front of me, her eyes brimming with tears. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Honey, that night, I walked out of our house fully intending to betray you. But I couldn't. Something, maybe the universe, was on your side. It made it clear that I'm meant to be with you and only you. Please forgive me. Please let me stay your wife. Let's put this behind us and go back to the happy life we had. Please." Her tears spilled over as she pleaded, her words desperate and raw. For a moment, I pitied her. I could see her guilt, her regret, and the pain she carried. But what I didn't feel was love. I looked into her eyes, the same eyes I had loved for so many years, and I gave her my answer. I would have preferred not to. I never told her the truth about the other woman I had been spending time with. It was my mother, here for a visit. Nor did I tell her whether I believed her story about that weekend, about how her dreams had crumbled. I didn't even tell her I loved her, because I wasn't sure I did anymore. Rachel didn't give up, at least not immediately. She tried everything to win me back, but I avoided her. I traveled more for work, stayed late in town, or simply kept to myself at home. When she spoke to me, I only answered with a nod or a shake of my head. I moved into a separate bedroom and ate my meals at different times than her. The gap between us grew wider with each passing day. Eventually, Rachel got tired of fighting a battle she couldn't win. She left. We never filed for divorce, but she moved to another place and started her own life. Sometimes, I think about ending it formally. Maybe one day, I will. But for now, I'd rather not. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.
Bye bye.